Well, hey y'all, and welcome to the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. I am Susan, your hostess. We are in my kitchen today. We're doing a home canning 24 type thing for you. First time canning English peas, but they are dry English peas that I picked up from Azure Standard. Um, so I've got a half gallon here. That's 8 cups that's already been measured out. I'm going to pick through these to see if there's any bad ones. I'm going to rinse them, and then I'm going to let them soak for 30 minutes, and then we're going to get them in our canning jars. I'm following the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. On page 390, there's a recipe for black-eyed peas. I'm not raw packing because these are dry, but I could probably do it and just do a half cup in each one of my jars. So we're going to get these peas sorted, rinsed, and soaked for 30 minutes, and then I will be back. I'll show you what they look like before the soak and what they look like after the soak. For this recipe, you will process your pints for 40 minutes and your quarts for 50 minutes. Okay, so I have measured out 4 cups because I can only do 8 pints at a time, so that's what it looks like dry in my bowl. We're going to move our bowl over to our sink, and we're going to fill this with cold water to allow them to expand. So I've got approximately 2 inches of water over my peas. I'm going to let them soak for about 30 minutes or a little bit longer, depending on how fast they start to expand. They will not be soft. They will still be hard, and we're going to get them rinsed again or drained, and then we'll get them into our jars. Okay, they've been soaking for 30 minutes. Y'all can see that they have swollen a little bit in my bowl. And I'm going to get my other set of these ready when these are coming out of the canner, so they can go into my canner. I will change out my water in my canner to cold water, and everything will be cold going into the canner. So I'm just going to set the bowl aside for right now. I've already put a half teaspoon of canning salt into my jars. This one had a label on it. It's okay, it still works. And I'm just going to move these forward. And I've got a half cup scoop that I'm going to use. It's important to have all your canning equipment ready to go when you're ready to can. So I'm going to start with a half a cup, a level half cup into each jar. We may have a few peas left over from them swelling. We'll divide them up between the 8 jars. So there's just a little bit of peas left in my colander. I'm going to get them scooted to one end and get these into my cup. And we're going to divide them between the 8 jars. Sometimes you'll have floaters when you're rinsing your beans. Just go ahead and remove those. I didn't have any this time around, but sometimes that does happen. So we're just going to finish these jars off with a few little peas that are left here. And get that out of the way. I'm going to fill my jars to the 1-inch headspace. This is 1 inch right here, this little rim. That's your 1-inch headspace. At this point, I'm going to wipe the rims of my jars with, well, I'm going to debubble first, and I'm going to measure to make sure that it is at the 1-inch headspace. So you just stir your jars. You don't want too much water in your jars, and you don't want not enough water in your jars, because these beans are going to expand, or these peas are going to expand in the jars as they process. So you want to make sure you're at that 1-inch mark. It's okay if the tooth touches the water just a tad, but you don't want it to go in deeply. So they're all okay. So now I'm going to clean the rims of my jars with some vinegar and a clean rag. I always wipe these down really good, regardless of whether they have meat or they have just a vegetable in there. I've got my 1-piece canning lids that have been soaking in warm water. That's just to help the gaskets. And you can watch some of my other videos explaining why I use the 1-piece now. So we're just going to apply it like we would a regular lid. I want to make sure it's getting on there straight though. So I'm going to take 3 fingers and just tighten it. I'm going to go ahead and get this into my canner. Since my canner is cold, I don't have to use my things to put them into the canner. And as I go along, I will wipe each rim and apply the lid one at a time and get it into my canner. 3 fingers. So in my canner, I have put the appropriate amount of water. There is little lines on the side of your canner that you can feel with your finger. And this canner holds about 1 gallon of water to get it to that first mark. And I have placed my jars in cold water in a cold canner because everything is cold. If it was hot, you would do hot water in your canner and everything in your jars would be hot. We're going to apply our lid. I always take some Crisco or some kind of oil and oil around the rim of my canner and also the gasket to make sure that it adheres. So the top of my lid has a arrow on it. I always check the pipe vent to make sure that I can see through it, and then I apply my lid. I've got my weight for my altitude. It's 10 pounds of weight. These are pints. They will process for 40 minutes. If they were quarts, they would process for 50 minutes. So you go according to your altitude for your weight, and then the process time usually stays the same. I also double check to make sure that my canner is centered on my canning burner. This is an electric stove, so I have a special burner that we use specifically for canning. I'm going to get this bowl away from the stove because it's glass, and we're going to set our heat. When you buy a new canner, you need to find out what setting on your stove is the sweet spot. On my stove for this canner, it is the number 8. So I'm going to set that. I'm going to allow this to vent for 10 minutes, and then after that 10 minutes is up, that's the venting time builds up the pressure in the canner. This little button here will pop up. There's a safety valve on this side that if that pops, you've got too much pressure in your canner. Once that 10 minutes is up, I will apply my weight. I will wait for it to start to jiggle, and then I will set my timer for 40 minutes. After that time is up, I turn my burner off and allow my canner to naturally come down off of temperature. You don't ever want to force it. You want it to come back down naturally off the pressure. Once that comes down, it usually takes about 35 to 40 minutes for me. I will then open my canner and allow it to sit there for 5 minutes with the lid just slightly ajar. With one-piece canning lids especially, you want to make sure that you don't have any siphoning. Once that is done, we'll pull the jars out and we'll take a look. Okay, this is processed for 40 minutes. Well, processed for 10 minutes steam, 40 minutes with the weight on here. It's been about 35 minutes and my button has popped down on this canner. You always open this away from your face because of the steam. And I'm just going to lift the lid up and just sit it on the canner. I'm not going to open it all the way. I'm going to allow it to sit for an additional 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes is up. What you see at the bottom is the starch off of the peas, and that is perfectly normal, and these are ready to come out of the canner. So I've got to get 16 jars on this mat, so I'm going to be careful placing them. You want to leave at least a ½ inch between your jars. And I always put a mat underneath my jars, between the counter and my jars, because I do not want my jars to bust when they hit that cold counter. So these are looking really, really good. They should have a nice flavor when I open up a jar. And it cost me literally pennies on the dollar to do this. So I have saved a lot of money because y'all know canned goods in the store has gotten quite expensive. These lids will pop when they seal. And they are shelf stable. I have not had a fail with the one-piece canning lid. Thank you, my friends, for watching. This is Home Canning 24. We are canning dry English peas. Be blessed, everybody.